Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And it's been a minute since I've been over here and read some meditations, so I grabbed the Melody Beatty meditation books, and I thought that I could just dive right in and start reading some of the meditations in here. I didn't even go in today to look and see what the topics are, so I'm going to be as surprised as you are, and hopefully the universe is going to speak to us and give us exactly what we need today. Sometimes when I bring out all of my meditation books, I'll go in there and I'm like, okay, higher power or universe or whatever, speak to me today and give me or tell me what it is that I need to be working on. So let's hope that that's how it is today. All right, so let's start off today with The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beatty, my favorite meditation book of life, and it is January 27th. Let's get in here and see what the book has to say to us. Okay, Needing People. Oh, this will be interesting. Needing People, January 27th. We can find the balance between needing people too much and not letting ourselves need anyone at all. Many of us have unmet dependency needs lingering from the past. While we want others to fulfill our desire to be loved unconditionally, we may have chosen people who cannot or will not be there for us. Some of us are so needy from not being loved that we drive people away by needing them too much. Some of us go to the other extreme. We may have become used to people not being there for us, so we push them away. We fought off our feelings of neediness by becoming overly independent, not allowing ourselves to need anyone. Some of us won't let people be there for us. Either way, we are living out unfinished business. Wow. We deserve better. When we change, our circumstances will change. If we are too needy, we respond to that by accepting the needy part of us. We let ourselves heal from the pain of past needs going unmet. We stop telling ourselves we're unlovable because we haven't been loved the way we wanted and needed. If we have shut off the part of us that needs people, we become willing to open up, be vulnerable, and let ourselves be loved. We let ourselves have needs. We will get the love we need and desire when we begin to believe we're lovable and when we allow that to happen. Today I will strive for the balance between being too needy and not allowing myself to need people. I will let myself receive the love that is there for me. You know, it's interesting as I'm sitting here and I'm reading this meditation and I'm thinking to myself that this is an actually really simple concept, right? But it is a struggle that I have had probably my entire life. Maybe up until a couple years ago, where I don't know, vacillated between these two extremes of I don't need anybody and I can do everything on my own and I'm independent, and that also led to a lot of isolation. And I think this idea of independence and I don't need anybody and I don't depend on anybody for validation led to me also isolating from people as well, right? That went from that to being, that would be one end of the spectrum, right? To the other end of the spectrum, which was where I found myself in, you know, unhealthy romantic relationships. And I don't mean like extremely unhealthy. I mean unhealthy to the point where you know, I get in arguments and beg people to stay, and yes, I did, and you know, I lost my self-worth and my self-love in the whole, I don't know, mixture of loving somebody else, that I lost myself. I think anybody probably can relate to that if you've been in any kind of romantic relationship where you lose yourself in sight of the bigger goal, which is I have to keep this romantic relationship together, you know? And only about, I guess I would say, maybe the journey for me started, oh shoot, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 years ago when we entered marriage counseling. And I can remember, you know, at that time, like, our marriage was not good, and I thought we were headed to divorce, and we probably were. And, you know, I can remember sitting in therapy in an individual session. I've shared this many times before. And our therapist at the time, he looked at me and he said, well, how would you feel if the relationship didn't last, if it didn't make it? And I said, oh my God, I would be devastated. I don't know what I would do, you know? And he said, but what would happen then? And I go, well, what do you mean? Like, I can't imagine. He was like, but like, would you be able to go on and live? And I was like, well, I don't even want to think about that. Like, I can't imagine my life without Alex and whatever. And the really sad part about that is looking back on my life, not today, because our marriage today is good, but looking back on where our marriage was at that point, was that I was willing to accept subpar, conditional love instead of having what I wanted in a relationship, which is what I have today, you know? Back then, I was willing, and I had done that in 2 previous relationships. I was willing to just have anything, you know, so that I could have a relationship, because a relationship defined me. Because if I had somebody sitting next to me, if I had somebody to come home to, what that meant was that I was lovable, that I was worthy, that somebody out there wanted me, that they desired me. And so I was seeking validation through the eyes and the love of somebody else, right? Even if often that didn't feel good, and it didn't really feel like they really wanted me or desired me that much, you know? I was willing to take, you know, nickels and dimes compared to what I deserved. And I can remember sitting in that session, and he was like, so what would happen? And he kept on pushing me, you know? And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, like, you know, eventually, like, I guess I would be okay. And he said, so the marriage, you know, like, if it dissolved, and I said, well, I wouldn't want to imagine that. But, like, I mean, yeah, eventually I'd be okay. And he said, so you would go on and you would push through it and eventually you'd be okay. And I said, yeah. And he said, so you would be okay. I can't remember exactly how it all went, but I was like, right. He said, so you don't need Alex. And I was like, I mean, it was this come to Jesus aha moment for me, you guys. I had never felt that before in any kind of relationship, any, I don't know, friendship, any relationship that I had with anybody. So clearly, where I realized, he looked at me and he said, so then what that says is that you choose to stay in this relationship, no matter given the circumstances, no matter if it's good, no matter if it's bad, no matter what it is, you choose to stay there, right? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, so, you know, going forward, wouldn't you rather be in a relationship where you choose to be with Alex and he chooses to be with you? And then that's the condition of your relationship, instead of this like parasitic relationship where you need each other, and how can you possibly go on if you don't have each other? And it was just, I mean, it was this moment for me where I was like, oh my God, like that's exactly what I want, right? Like, I want to be able to be independent within my own relationship, you know? I want to be able to not have to depend on somebody for my happiness. I want to be able to be in a marriage and thrive independently. And I want my husband to be able to thrive independently within a marriage, you know? And that doesn't mean that you can define whatever boundaries you want. We have very traditional boundaries. You know, when I say those things, people are like, oh, you know, this, that, and the other. No, we're a very traditional marriage over here, okay? But what I mean by that is that career-wise, passions-wise, like what we both love to do, we're able to thrive within the marriage. And what I realized is that I don't need him to define my self-worth. I don't need him to make me feel better about myself. I need myself to do that, you know? And to share that with somebody, that's amazing, right? Like, that's incredible, is to be able to share that with somebody. So, you know, this meditation is so fantastic when we talk about needing people, you know? And then I've gone to the other direction as well, where there have been moments where I have felt so let down by people that I've said, like, you know, like a lot of my girlfriends, they'll get out of relationships and they'll say, and I'm sure that there's many of you out there that have said it too, all men suck. And I'm like, okay, I'm sitting right here and I'm a man, so not all men suck. Well, not you. And I'm like, okay, but then if it's not me, then there have to be some men out there in a romantic relationship that won't suck for you as well, right? Like, that has to be the case. And they're like, well, I just don't want to think about that right now, you know? And I think we go to those opposite ends. It's because we're so hurt. We're in so much pain, right? That it's just like, I'm never going to allow myself to love again. I'm never going to allow myself to feel love again because I'm just going to isolate. I don't need anybody. I'm going to do this all on my own and whatever, you know? And, you know, I've even said to myself, like, in the years that we were working on our marriage, I would say, you know, and I don't know, I may have said this on video at some point, I'm not sure, I probably have, that if Alex and I didn't make it, I don't know that I would ever date again. I mean, honestly, it's a lot, you know, to meet each other's friends, to meet each other's parents, to get to know each other, to share that space with each other, to move in together. I mean, it's a lot, right? And so, like I've said to, you know, people, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, I don't know that I would do that ever again. It's a huge investment. It's a huge commitment to people, you know? I think today at 50, if that were the case, and, you know, at 50 and in all the marriage counseling we've done, I hope to God our marriage, like, lasts and makes it forever, and I think it will, you know, and I think it's a cheesy saying, that forever person, but I hope that Alex is my forever person, and I hope that I'm his, you know? But if that's not the case, I hope at some point I do allow myself to move forward and, you know, fall in love with somebody else again, and I would want that for him as well, you know? I hope that. I wouldn't want that just to be the end and for me to isolate and say, nope, I'm done, okay? Just because one bad experience, I'm not ever doing this again, you know? And I think that's what happens often. You know, my mom, she got divorced when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something like that. And, you know, she really didn't date a whole lot. I mean, she did a little bit, but she really didn't date a whole lot for the remainder of her life. And she had very strict boundaries on who she would date and things like that, you know, and there were a lot of things. Like when I was younger, she didn't want to date somebody because she didn't want to bring somebody around her child, and she had a lot of specific things that were important to her, you know, but and I respect those things, you know, and so I think that was important to her as a mother and, you know, as somebody out in the dating world and whatnot. And there were a lot of things, like my mom was somebody that said, you know, she didn't want to be intimate with somebody, and, you know, and she made this very clear. She was like, I don't want to be intimate with somebody before I know that we're going to be getting married, or maybe even getting married, you know? And she's like, there's not a lot of men. I mean, she would talk about this openly with people, and she'd say there's not a lot of men that want to date somebody that's not going to be intimate with them, you know? So what do you do in that situation, you know? And I get it, you know, I understand that. And I think there's so much that goes along with it. But I think that my mom got to a point in her life where she kind of like turned off this idea of being with somebody. And not that she was turned off to it, she turned it off. And so she kind of just saw herself as this individual, this independent person that was self-reliant and could only depend on herself. And I think it was kind of sad because there were people that came along through the years, you know, that wanted to date my mom, or, you know, were interested in her. And it was just kind of like she had this like guard up, you know, that she was like, nope, I think that, you know, I don't really want to be with anybody, and, you know, whatever. And I think that often we put that out there into the world. I think also not just in romantic relationships, but I also think in friendships as well, you know, I think sometimes we get burned by people, or sometimes we get burned by a group of people, you know, it's like a group of friends or whatever. And then it's like, okay, like I'm going to distance myself and I'm not going to see them anymore, and I'm not going to hang out with them anymore and whatever. I don't need those people, you know? And you know, what was interesting to me, okay, so I'll share a little story with you. So I was not doing a lot for my recovery when I stepped away from going to meetings. For those of you that don't know, there was a 4-year period where I didn't go to meetings. And about 10 years ago, I came back into the rooms of recovery. And I didn't use during those 4 years, but it was the lowest period of my sobriety. I had no emotional sobriety, and I had no spiritual foundation whatsoever. My only connection with recovery was talking to my best friend every day and talking to my sponsor, you know, every once in a while. But the last time that I went was my home group meeting. And I got into an argument with this person that he still goes to my home group meeting. And so anyway, I went to this meeting and got into an argument with him, and then he called me when I got home and we got into another argument. I'll share the story on here sometime because it's kind of a profound story of forgiveness, and I've shared it before in my vlog. And then when I came back, I literally saw him like the second day that I came back, and we made amends to each other. And today he's one of my greatest friends, you know? But there was several weeks where I would go to any meeting around that area, but I was not willing to go to my home group because I was so worried about what they would think of me or what they would say about me and whatever. And I had this friend of mine who he's probably, I don't know, 15 years older than me. He's a gentleman that I look up to greatly. And I was going to a speaker meeting, and he was the chairperson of that speaker meeting. So I would see him like every Sunday. And he would say to me, like, when are you coming back to your home group? When you're coming back to your home group? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like scared to come to that meeting. And this one Sunday, he said to me, he goes, I'll see you on Tuesday. And I said, what? And he goes, it's been long enough. I'll see you on Tuesday. You need to come back. And I was like, oh my God, because when we're told to do something in recovery, you do it, like, And so I can remember Tanya and I walked through those doors, and I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, these people, what they're going to think about me, blah, 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 whatever. And I had been isolating from that meeting. I had been pushing people away, pushing people away, pushing people away, pushing people away. And I walked into that meeting, and I encountered love like I had never seen it before, I was just enveloped in love, and people were like, we missed you, we're so happy that you made it back. So many people don't make it back, and people were they just were joyous to see me, and it made me feel really good, and it made me feel like, okay, people care about me, and no, it didn't validate my existence, and no, it didn't validate love inside of me or whatever, but it did make me feel like maybe, I don't know, that people at that meeting cared about me a little bit more than I thought they did, And I think that's the other thing, is that sometimes we have to look for our reasons for isolating, Are we isolating and are we pushing people away because we're punishing them? Or are we isolating and pushing people away because we're punishing ourselves? And I think it's an important question to ask, So anyway, let me know what you think about that meditation in the comment section below. I think it was a really good meditation, and I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.